somebody struggling to find their joy when they're not even in it, what would you suggest to them?
I think if you are able and if you have the resources, you need to start surrounding yourself with a network of people that aren't going to tell you what you want to hear, but tell you what you need to hear. And there is a very, very strong distinction in that, in people who will keep you accountable. It's called tough love, as that's the short term for it. We tend to gravitate to what's easy and what feels nice. And sometimes we know that even so, it's kind of against our instincts, but it's a much easier road than going uphill. And that doesn't serve you. I realized that I really needed to start challenging myself and doing what was truly difficult if I was going to grow. And if I was going to grow as a person, it's very easy to say, oh, I studied biopharmaceuticals in school, and I know everything about that topic. I challenge people to study something completely, take a course on art history. Take something that's going to take you completely out of your comfort zone and learn something new, because it is in those moments of feeling insecure, where your confidence is a little bit challenged, where you're putting yourself in a conversation where you actually have to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I would love to hear more. Tell me more about this topic and this subject. I am a sponge. Speak to me. I'm here to learn. That vulnerability and that humility is the thing that I see drives people forward every single day. I work in branding. Essentially, my job is to help people tell their stories, to help them find their core values, to help them find a way to get their consumers to connect with them. And if you cannot be honest with yourself and say, these are my weaknesses, these are my strengths, you're never going to truly get to that point of connectivity and being able to learn. We are so driven by what other people think. Our egos can get bruised so easily if we don't keep an open mind. And it also comes back to self-compassion and self-love, and giving ourselves a pat on the back, because the one thing I learned, and it's a story I have to remind myself of every single day, is that I tried to speak to myself as if I was coming to myself for mentorship and help.
How was it growing up with apartheid? I mean, I don't get to talk to too many people, and I don't know, most of my listeners are in the United States, although I have a lot in the Philippines and a lot in different. It's very interesting when I look at where my listeners are, but I don't have that many that would be familiar. So just briefly, if you could.
Yeah. I'm happy to speak about it, because I think, as I mentioned before when we started out, we are so conditioned by the way we were raised that the little things that kind of became a part of our values, or the way we look at life, it stems from the home. I believe that. And the way I grew up in a mixed race family is the way I can explain it, during a very tumultuous political time in South Africa, has also led to how I lived my life as an adult, to how long I remained cautious. I grew up in a time where you didn't speak out. You tried to lay low. You didn't try and bring attention to yourself, just in case it could lead to some trouble for your family. And it wasn't all negative. I can tell you one thing. I wouldn't change my childhood for the world, just because of how resilient my parents were in teaching us about the world and life and being hopeful about it, even during dire circumstances. I think it gave me a great sense of being able to be grateful for even little things, tiny little things. I mean, I lived in New York for over 20 years, and I would wake up in the morning and it would be a cold, snowy morning, and I'd be walking to the subway in New York, and I'd think, wow, you live in New York City. You're this little girl from South Africa. Look at where you live. And that is something I've carried with me, is to always be grateful.
That's your women
Women building women.
Women building women. I
Mhm.
didn't, yeah. And is that still happening?
Yep, it's still happening. We actually earlier this year just got an amazing grant from Masterclass
Mhm.
to start giving some classes to some of the people that are involved in our organization to expose them to the arts and culture and different careers from, some of the people they're seeing on TV, learn about directing, learn about making documentaries,
Yeah.
learning about telling their stories, learn about art. So we are very excited to be able to, in some small way, make an impact and show these women out there that there's so much more to the world and that in any way we can, we're here to support them.
Back to the branding with having people know their core values and tell their story and so on. How do you help people with that? Like somebody
So
who's listening that wants they're like, "I don't know. How do I know what they are? I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, but I don't know my what are your choices?"
it's interesting how I took this approach, and I know I'm preaching to the choir when I speak to you because of your career and background. I worked with lawyers for most of my career, right? They're an interesting bunch of people. I worked with lawyers, I worked with investment bankers, I worked with all of these senior executives, C-level executives for most of my career. Part of how I tried to create the outlier, my partner and I, his name is Frank Carlisi. He is literally the person that gets me out of bed every day. Before I even go into my branding business, I will say that before you make a career change and you want to start your own business or you need to do your own thing, make sure that you have the right partners, make sure that you have the right people by your side. It makes all the difference. Doesn't matter what you know, it's about having that network of people that really raise you up every day and challenge you every day. Man, he gives me a hard time every day, but we're like brother and sister sometimes the way we fight. But everything he does when he challenges me makes my work better.
What is the hardest challenge that you've overcome and how did you do it?
Honestly, I will say one of the most challenging things that have happened recently and will be an impact in my career for a long time was COVID. Because when in 20 early
I'm well,
2020.
I meant personally, not necessarily professionally.
No,
Yeah. Okay.
professionally and personally. It is something that impacted literally both sides of my life and as far as my self-esteem and self-worth was concerned. So my business partner and I had in early 2020 we put on a very, very successful event at Webster Hall in New York City. We sold it out. Over 600 people came. And we were preparing ourselves to grow our business in this way, where we were going to go on this national tour. We were going to go around the United States and share our values and what it is we do with our company. We were super excited. And our entire company and everything that we had prepared for as individuals had come to this moment. We had the red carpet laid out for us. We had the partnerships, the sponsorships. I was telling my family, they were so proud of us that we had gotten this opportunity to travel around the country, sell out venues, share this thing. I was writing about it. This was everything I could have ever dreamed of. And then COVID hit and said, people cannot gather anymore. And the thing is, the reason why I say this is a personal thing was I took it personally. And this is something I really try and educate people about is that when things go wrong in business and in life, we always tend to absorb the impact and figure out what did I do wrong? How could I have done things differently? How could I have insulated myself better? How could I have protected my business partner from going through this? We now have to completely pivot our business. Do we leave our business? Do we start from scratch? And it was a very personal thing for me. I realized that there was so much devastation going up where people were losing family members from this. But just I can only speak for me and my journey. It it uprooted me at a point where I just felt I had gotten my feet on the ground again. It was a time where I just felt like I had come through this dark, difficult time and I was ready to start over. And I felt like a tornado came and tore my life apart. And so the COVID pandemic kicking off in early 2020 was a very difficult thing.